I'm Amelia, 34, and until recently I thought I had a close relationship with my parents. That changed when they sold our family home, gave my brother Jason $280,000, and then showed up at my doorstep with luggage. What hurt most wasn't just the favoritism, but how they invaded my space like it was theirs to claim. I never imagined I'd have to fight for respect in my own home. Before I share how I stood up to my parents for the first time in my life, let me know in the comments where you're watching from and hit that subscribe button if family drama stories resonate with you. I grew up in a modest suburb outside Boston, the oldest of two children. Our home wasn't fancy, but it was filled with 30 years of memories, both sweet and bitter. My parents, Margaret and Robert, provided a stable middle-class lifestyle, but there was always something off about our family dynamic. From an early age, I noticed how my younger brother Jason received special treatment. When I brought home straight A's, my achievements were expected. When Jason managed a B-, my parents celebrated with ice cream. This pattern continued throughout our childhood, small inequalities that built up like sediment over time. Jason and I were close as young children, building snow forts in winter and catching fireflies in summer. But as we entered our teens, the gap between us widened. He became aware of his special status and began to leverage it, knowing he could get away with things I never could. I still remember my 16th birthday when my parents forgot to buy a cake because they were busy at Jason's baseball tournament. Or my high school graduation when they left early because Jason, then 14, was bored. These moments stung, but I rationalized them away, believing that family loyalty meant accepting these small hurts. Despite the uneven playing field at home, I worked hard to forge my own path. I waited tables to help pay for college while maintaining a scholarship. After graduation, I landed a job at a growing tech company, slowly climbing the ranks to become a senior software engineer. 3 years ago, at 31, I purchased my own home, a modern 3-bedroom townhouse with a small garden that became my sanctuary. Meanwhile, Jason bounced between jobs, never holding one for more than a few months. He attended 3 different colleges but never graduated from any of them. By the time he was 30, he had moved back into our parents' basement where they supported him completely. They paid his car insurance, bought his groceries, and never asked for rent. Despite our different paths, I continued seeking my parents' approval. I invited them over for dinner regularly, helped them with technology issues, and called at least twice a week. I thought maybe if I was successful enough, kind enough, or present enough, they would finally see me as equal to my brother in their eyes. Every holiday, I would watch them give Jason expensive gifts while I received practical items. Last Christmas, he got a new laptop while I got oven mitts. I told myself it didn't matter that I was an adult who didn't need their validation. But deep down, a part of me still yearned for equal standing in their hearts. I had no idea that their favoritism would soon become undeniably explicit, or that they would soon force me to confront the painful reality I had been avoiding for decades. The call came on a Tuesday evening in April while I was preparing dinner. Seeing my mother's name on the screen, I answered with my usual cheerfulness, expecting our normal check-in. Instead, her words sent a chill through me. "We sold the house," she announced without preamble. "We close in 3 weeks." I nearly dropped my phone into the stir-fry. "What? When did you decide this? Where are you moving?" "We've been thinking about it for a while," she replied vaguely. "The market is good, and the house is too big for just us now that Jason will be moving out." My mind raced with questions. "Jason's moving out, where to? And where are you and Dad going?" There was a pause, the kind that precedes uncomfortable news. "Well, that's partly why I'm calling. We've given Jason most of the money from the house sale to help him get a fresh start." My knife clattered against the cutting board. "Most of the money? How much are we talking about?" $280,000, she said, as if discussing the weather. "After paying off the remaining mortgage, that's what we had left." The amount struck me like a physical blow. Our family home had been bought decades ago for a fraction of its current value, and property in our suburb had skyrocketed. They had likely sold it for close to $700,000. And what about me? The question slipped out before I could stop it, sounding childish even to my own ears. "Oh, Amelia, My mother sighed with that familiar dismissive tone. You don't need any help. You have your house, your career. Jason hasn't had the same advantages. Advantages. As if my achievements had been handed to me rather than earned through years of hard work and sacrifice. We gave him the money so he can finally start his business idea, she continued. You know he's been wanting to open that sports memorabilia shop. I did know. It was his third sure-thing business idea in 5 years after the failed food truck and the abandoned podcast network. Each venture had been funded at least partially by my parents, and each had collapsed due to Jason's poor planning and lack of follow-through. Mom, I worked 3 jobs to buy my house. I never asked you for help with the down payment, but it would have been nice to be considered. Your father and I discussed this thoroughly, she said, her voice cooling. Jason needs the help more than you do. You've always been the responsible one, Amelia. You should be proud of that. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen island dinner forgotten as tears slid down my face. It wasn't about the money itself. I had built my life without their financial support and was proud of that independence. It was the blatant message the money sent Jason was worth investing in. I was not. The next day I drove to my parents' house hoping a face-to-face conversation might help them understand my hurt. Instead, I found Jason in the driveway loading boxes into his new SUV, another purchase from his windfall. Hey sis, he greeted me with a grin. Come to help with the packing. I came to talk to Mom and Dad about their decision, I said carefully. His expression hardened slightly. Their decision to help me finally get on my feet. What's there to talk about? $280,000 is a lot of money, Jason. That was their retirement safety net. He shrugged. They want to see me succeed. Besides, when they're older, they know they can count on you to take care of them. He said this as if it were the most natural arrangement in the world, the golden son receiving the gold while the dutiful daughter received the duty. Inside, my parents were sorting through decades of belongings. When I tried to express my feelings, my father cut me off. This isn't up for debate, Amelia. We've made our decision. Jason has struggled while you've thrived. That's something you should be grateful for, not resentful about. I drove home in tears, a familiar knot of inadequacy tightening in my chest. That night I called my best friend Sarah and sobbed into the phone. They've always favored him, but this makes it so explicit, I told her. And the worst part is that they don't even see anything wrong with it. What I didn't realize then was that my parents' decision to sell their house and fund Jason's dreams had created another problem, one that would soon land literally at my doorstep. 2 weeks later, I returned home from a grocery run to find my parents' sedan parked in my driveway. Confused, I walked inside to discover them in my living room, surrounded by 4 large suitcases. There she is, my father called out cheerfully. We were wondering when you'd get back. I stood frozen in the entryway. What's going on? I didn't know you were coming to visit. My mother emerged from my kitchen with a glass of water. We thought it would be easier to stay with you while we figure out our next move. The house closing happened more quickly than we expected. Stay with me, I repeated, my brain struggling to process this development. For how long? Just until we find a place, my father said vaguely. Shouldn't be too long. But as the first day turned into the first week, it became increasingly clear that not too long had no defined endpoint. My parents hadn't even begun seriously looking for an apartment. Instead, they had settled into my home with alarming permanence. My mother took over my kitchen, rearranging my carefully organized cabinets without asking. This layout makes much more sense, she declared, moving my spices from their alphabetical order into some system only she understood. I don't know how you found anything before. My father commandeered the living room, complaining about my choice of streaming services and insisting we watch his favorite shows each evening. As long as I'm here, we're not watching that garbage you like, he said, changing the channel from my documentary to a reality show about fishing. The guest bedroom became their room, with their belongings spreading beyond its boundaries into the shared spaces of my home. My mother hung family photos on my walls without asking, replacing the art prints I had carefully selected. By the end of the first week, the invasion had extended to my schedule and routines. My parents expected me to join them for dinner every night regardless of my work commitments. They questioned me when I needed to work late or wanted to meet friends as if I were a teenager with a curfew rather than a homeowner in my 30s. Working from home became nearly impossible. My mother would vacuum during my video meetings or interrupt to ask trivial questions. My father would play television at volumes that penetrated my home office walls and act offended when I asked him to turn it down. "I can't hear properly at lower volumes," he'd complain. "Maybe you should go to your office if you need quiet." The breaking point came when I returned from a rare evening out with colleagues to find my home office completely reorganized. My mother had cleaned my workspace, rearranging my files, decorative items, and even my computer setup. "Mom, you can't just go into my office and move things around," I said, struggling to keep my voice level. I had everything organized for my workflow. "You should be thanking me," she replied, genuinely confused by my reaction. That room was a mess. I spent hours making it presentable. The next morning, I found a Post-it note on my coffee maker with a shopping list in my mother's handwriting, dinner ingredients she expected me to purchase on my way home from the office. That evening, she seemed surprised when I walked in empty-handed. "I thought you were picking up groceries for dinner?" she said, disappointment evident in her tone. "I never agreed to that," I replied carefully. "And I already have plans with Sarah tonight." "You're going out again, but your father and I hardly see you." The absurdity of this statement, given that they were living in my house, nearly made me laugh. Instead, I felt a familiar anxiety rising, the need to please warring with my sense of violation. That night over drinks, Sarah helped me see what I had been too close to recognize. "They gave all their money to Jason, and now they expect you to give all your resources to them," she pointed out. "Your money, your space, your time. They're treating you like a retirement plan." Her words crystallized what I had been feeling but couldn't articulate. My parents hadn't just moved in temporarily. They were redistributing family resources according to the same unfair formula they'd always used: financial support for Jason, practical burdens for me. By the 3-week mark, my parents showed no signs of apartment hunting. Instead, they had settled into a routine that revolved around my home and my resources. My mother had begun borrowing my clothes, without asking, stretching out my sweaters and returning them unwashed. My father invited his friends over for card games in my dining room, leaving beer cans and cigarette butts on my back patio. "Don't be so uptight," he said when I mentioned the cigarette burns on my outdoor furniture. "It's just a little wear and tear." One evening, I came home early from work with a migraine and overheard my parents on the phone with Jason. I paused in the hallway, not intending to eavesdrop until I heard my name. "Amelia's being difficult," my mother was saying. "She acts like we're imposing when she has this big house all to herself. 3 bedrooms for one person is excessive, don't you think?" "I know," Jason replied, his voice tinny through the speakerphone. "She could easily convert that home office into a bedroom for you guys. It's not like she needs to work from home all the time. We've been looking at those retirement communities," my father added. "But they're so expensive. It makes more financial sense to stay with Amelia. She can help take care of us as we get older." My blood ran cold. This wasn't a temporary arrangement in their minds. They had given Jason their financial resources and now expected me to provide for their future needs. The home I had saved for years to buy was being reframed as a family asset that I was selfishly hoarding. The next day, my mother casually mentioned that I should consider converting my office into a proper bedroom for them. "That pull-out sofa in the guest room isn't comfortable for your father's back," she explained. "A real bed would be better for long-term." "Long-term?" I asked, my fork pausing midway to my mouth. "I thought you were looking for an apartment." My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite interpret. "Well, we've been thinking," my mother began carefully. "With housing costs so high, it might make more sense for us to stay here. You work such long hours, you're hardly home anyway. And we could help out," my father added. "Your mother could cook and clean. You wouldn't have to do those things after a long day." The implication was clear: they would provide domestic labor in exchange for housing. The fact that I preferred cooking for myself or that I already had a cleaning service came twice monthly wasn't considered relevant to this arrangement. I like living alone, I said finally. This is my space. Don't be selfish, Amelia, my mother replied, her tone sharpening. Family helps family. We gave Jason his start, and now you can help us. The equation was brutally simple. Jason deserved financial support to pursue his dreams, while I deserved the burden of becoming my parents' caretaker and housing provider. As the days passed, my anxiety increased. I began having trouble sleeping, lying awake, listening to my father's snoring through the walls. My work performance suffered as I struggled to concentrate amid the constant interruptions and emotional strain. During an important presentation, I completely lost my train of thought and had to be prompted by a colleague. That afternoon, I broke down crying during a team meeting and had to excuse myself, something that had never happened in my professional life before. My manager noticed the change. Is everything okay at home, Amelia? She asked with genuine concern. Just some family issues, I replied, vaguely embarrassed by my lack of professionalism. Take a personal day if you need it, she suggested. You've seemed stressed lately. I took her advice and stayed home the following day, only to find myself more stressed in my invaded space than I would have been at the office. I couldn't even cry in privacy because my mother kept checking on me. Her concern laced with comments about how I always did work too hard and need someone to take care of you. The irony was painful. While Jason enjoyed his freedom and financial windfall, I was drowning under the weight of expectations and invasive care I never asked for. The situation reached its boiling point on a Saturday evening about a month after my parents moved in. I returned from a quick errand to find my driveway filled with unfamiliar cars and the sound of multiple voices coming from inside my home. Walking in, I discovered my living room and kitchen filled with relatives, a full family dinner party in progress. My Aunt Lisa, Uncle Phil, and several cousins were gathered around my dining table, which had been extended with a folding table I didn't even know my parents had brought with them. There she is, my mother exclaimed when I entered. We were wondering where you'd gone off to. I stood frozen keys still in hand. What is this? Just a little family get-together, my father explained, raising his glass of my wine. Your mother thought it would be nice to have everyone over now that we're settled. Settled. The word echoed in my head like a warning bell. Throughout the uncomfortable evening, I received a stream of comments that revealed how my parents had been framing the situation to our extended family. You're so lucky to have your parents living with you, my Aunt Lisa said, patting my arm. So many young people today don't make family a priority. Your mother tells me they're helping you maintain this big house, Uncle Phil added. Good arrangement for everyone. Amelia always was the responsible one, another relative commented within earshot. Not like Jason. He needs more support, you know. The final straw came when I overheard my mother in the kitchen telling my cousin Diane, "We're planning to stay indefinitely. At our age, it's good to have family around. And Amelia has plenty of room she doesn't use." Later that evening, my father casually mentioned they were thinking of selling their car. No point in having two vehicles when we can just use yours when needed, he explained. Save on insurance that way. After the guests finally left, I retreated to my bedroom feeling sick to my stomach. But when I went to my home office to send a delayed work email the next morning, I discovered my computer had been used. Browser tabs I hadn't opened were active, and my email was logged in. I checked my browser history and found searches for adding family member to house deed and senior parent moving in with child legal considerations. Locking myself in the bathroom, I experienced my first ever anxiety attack, struggling to breathe as the reality of my situation crashed over me. My parents hadn't just invaded my space temporarily. They were actively planning to claim it permanently, researching ways to establish legal rights to my home. With shaking hands, I called my therapist, Dr. Collins, despite it being Sunday. She picked up on the third ring. I need help, I told her, my voice breaking. My parents have taken over my life, and I don't know how to stop them. Over the next hour, Dr. Collins helped me recognize the pattern of exploitation that had defined my family relationships for decades. This isn't about housing Amelia, she said gently. This is about boundaries you've never been allowed to set. After our call, I texted Sarah, who came over immediately. Together, we drafted a plan for reclaiming my home and my autonomy. For the first time, I allowed myself to acknowledge the anger I'd suppressed for years, the unfairness of being both devalued and overburdened by the people who should have been my biggest supporters. That night, I barely slept rehearsing the words I would need to say to my parents. Words that went against a lifetime of accommodating their needs and accepting their unequal treatment. I was terrified, but underneath the fear was a steely determination. This was my home, my life, and it was time to claim it. I took Monday off work, knowing I needed a full day to handle what was coming. After my parents finished breakfast, I asked them to join me in the living room, saying I needed to discuss something important. The formality of my request made them exchange concerned glances, but they complied, settling onto the sofa while I sat across from them in my reading chair. I've realized something isn't working about this living arrangement. I began, my heart pounding but my voice steady. When you arrived, you said you would be staying temporarily while looking for a place. It's been over a month and you haven't looked at a single apartment. My mother started to speak, but I held up my hand, something I'd never done before. Their surprised expressions gave me the courage to continue. I've also discovered that you've been using my computer to research adding yourselves to my house deed, which shows me this was never meant to be temporary. You gave Jason $280,000, and now you expect me to give you free housing for the rest of your lives. That's not fair, my father protested, his face reddening. We're family. Families support each other. Yes, they do, I agreed. But support should go both ways and respect boundaries. You've rearranged my home, used my belongings without permission, criticized my lifestyle, interrupted my work, and planned a future using my resources without even consulting me. My mother's eyes filled with tears, a response that would normally have made me immediately backtrack and apologize. This time I continued, I love you both, but I need you to find your own place within 2 weeks. I'm happy to help you look for affordable senior apartments, and I'll even help with the deposit. But I can't be your retirement plan. How can you do this to us? My mother cried, tears spilling over. After everything we've done for you, where are we supposed to go? You could have had a comfortable retirement if you hadn't given most of your money to Jason. I pointed out the words I'd held back for weeks finally emerging. That was your choice. Just like it's my choice who lives in the home I pay for. We'll tell everyone you threw us out. My father threatened, his voice rising. The whole family will know you abandoned us. The old fear of disapproval flared, but I pushed through it. You're not being abandoned. You're being asked to live independently like most healthy adults in their 60s. And if you need to tell family, I'm the villain to save face, go ahead. I know the truth. What followed was the worst argument we'd ever had. My father yelled. My mother cried. I was called selfish, ungrateful, and heartless. But for perhaps the first time in my life, I didn't cave to their emotional pressure. You abandoned me when you gave everything to Jason. I said finally, my voice breaking. You made it clear where I stand in this family. I'm just following your lead. After they stormed off to the guest room, I called a real estate agent friend who specialized in senior housing. By that evening, I had a list of affordable apartments within their budget and 3 viewing appointments scheduled for the following day. I knocked on the guest room door and slid the printouts underneath. I'll drive you to see these tomorrow if you want, I offered. They all have availability within the next month. Out of curiosity, I also called Jason, putting the call on speaker so my parents could hear his response when I asked if they could stay with him while apartment hunting. No way, he said immediately. I don't have the space or time to deal with them right now. I'm busy getting my business off the ground with the money they gave me. Can't they just stay with you? You've got that big house. His response spoke volumes, and I could see in my parents' faces that they heard it too. For the remaining 2 weeks, I established clear house rules: no rearranging my belongings, no entering my office without permission, no inviting guests without asking. It was awkward and tense, but necessary. I was reclaiming my space one boundary at a time. When they complained about the apartments being too small or too expensive, I remained firm but compassionate. I know it's an adjustment, I told them, but you'll adapt just like I adapted to living on my own and supporting myself. By setting these boundaries, I wasn't just reclaiming my physical space. I was reclaiming my right to be treated with respect after a lifetime of being taken for granted. That confrontation happened just over 2 months ago. My parents now live in a modest two-bedroom apartment in a senior community about 20 minutes from my home. I helped them with the security deposit and first month's rent, a gesture that came from genuine care rather than obligation. The transition hasn't been smooth. There were tearful phone calls from my mother, accusations of abandonment, and attempts to guilt me into changing my mind. Some relatives took their side, sending me disapproving texts or making comments at family gatherings. But others, particularly my cousins who had witnessed the dynamic for years, privately expressed their support. "It's about time," my cousin Diane told me. "They've always expected more from you while giving everything to Jason." The most surprising development came 6 weeks after they moved out. My father called to ask for help setting up their internet, a normal request that didn't come packaged with guilt or accusations. It was a small moment, but it felt like progress. My relationship with my parents remains complicated. I visit them weekly, helping with technology issues or driving them to appointments when needed. These interactions have boundaries now, leaving me feeling helpful rather than exploited. Jason's new business has already hit financial troubles with poor location choice and inventory management issues. 2 weeks ago, he called asking if I could loan him $20,000 to tide him over. I declined politely but firmly, suggesting he take a business management course at the community college instead. My parents have begun to recognize in small ways the inequality of their treatment. When my mother recently commented that Jason seemed to be struggling despite their help, I saw a flicker of understanding in her eyes. "Perhaps we should have divided things more evenly," she admitted quietly. "You've always been so capable, we didn't think you needed anything from us." It wasn't a full acknowledgement, but it was something. A crack in the lifetime pattern of justifying their favoritism. The most profound change has been within me. Standing up to my parents broke something open inside, releasing me from the need for their approval. I've started dating again after a 2-year hiatus, meeting a kind architect named Daniel who respects my boundaries and admires my independence. My home feels like mine again. I've redecorated the guest room, turning it into a yoga and reading space. My work performance has rebounded, earning me a promotion last month. Friends comment on my newfound confidence, the ease with which I now state my preferences and needs. The journey hasn't been without guilt and doubt. There are nights I lie awake wondering if I've been too harsh, too selfish. These thoughts come less frequently now, countered by the peaceful feeling of waking up in a home that reflects my choices and respects my autonomy. Through therapy and support groups for adult children of difficult parents, I've learned that helping family doesn't mean sacrificing your well-being. True support uplifts everyone involved, rather than elevating one person at another's expense. I've also discovered that sometimes the kindest thing you can do for someone is to stop enabling destructive patterns. By setting boundaries with my parents, I've given them the opportunity to develop independence and resilience they might never have found if I'd continued as their caretaker. The relationship we're building now feels more honest, more balanced. It's fragile and imperfect, but it's based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. The hardest lesson was realizing that I had to respect myself before anyone else would respect me. For years, I accepted the role of family caretaker, while Jason received the role of family treasure. I didn't break that pattern until it threatened to consume the life I'd worked so hard to build. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who took you for granted? How did you find the courage to stand up for yourself? Share your experiences in the comments below. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video if my story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the bravest thing we can do is say no to the people we love most when saying yes would harm our well-being. Thank you for listening, and I wish you strength and clarity in your own family relationship.